They came out of the desert, dirty, unshaven, bleary-eyed, just a few hundred of them. Their cooking pots clanking against their saddles, their razor-sharp weapons tucked deep into their belts. For 40 years they'd been out there, ever since they'd escaped from Egypt, always on the move, always without a home. At the crest of the hill, they stopped. On the far side of the river, the desert ended and the farmland began. "Fellow Israelites, all this will be ours," said a tall man with blazing eyes. "This entire land of Canaan as far as the eye can see." "But General Joshua," someone said, "there's people there already. Look, little chimneys, little houses, little army patrols." "This land is our land," insisted their leader. "Our God has promised it to us. It is a land flowing with milk and honey." And he drew his sword and he pointed straight at the nearest town. "Blood and honey more like," said a voice at the back. Two men had never seen a city before. This one was a great walled thing that had been stuck up on top of a hill 1,000 years ago by some long-forgotten, power-crazy maniac. They sneaked past the vigilant eyes of the security guards, through the checkpoints, dodged the stop-and-search patrols. They were in. The two men stopped and gawped at the bars and casinos nestled in the ruins of the ancient holy places, then walked on quickly as a bunch of drunken priestesses waved and yelled at them from between the legs of a massive bronze corn god. Jericho, the oldest town in the world. If this was city life, they'd stick to the country any day. "Identification!" The two men pulled their hoods over their eyes and kept on walking. "Are you deaf?" Half a dozen burly thugs flung them against a wall. "Spread yourselves!" They kicked their legs apart and began to search them roughly and professionally. What do you want?" The two men were quivering with fear. "Anti-terrorist squad. We ask the questions. Names?" Caleb and Achan," stuttered the two men. "Those aren't Israelite names by any chance, are they?" "No. Only we've had word that some stinking little Israelite nomads have been causing trouble on the border." No, we're Amorites. We've just come into town to pick up some shopping, actually." And they handed over their papers. The thugs read them stony-faced and then passed them back. "All right, on your way." They watched as the strangers disappeared down the street. "What do you reckon on them papers? Forgeries?" "Oh, yeah. They're Israelites, all right. I know that stink. Desert, sweat and goat droppings. Come on, let's pull them in." Achan turned to Caleb and winked. "Easy," he whispered. "They never suspected a thing." "I'm not so sure," replied Caleb. "Don't look now, but I think we're being followed. Just walk slowly, and at the next right, run." "Now!" They sprinted up a dead-end street, crowded with tattooed fire-eaters and half-naked priests. "In here!" yelled Achan. "I'm not going in there, it's disgusting." "It's only a nightclub," insisted Achan. "It's 11 o'clock in the morning," said Caleb. "Get in there!" The club was damp, dark and smelt of stale booze. It was completely empty, except for an Egyptian travelling salesman who was slobbering over the barmaid. She shrugged him off, ambled up to the two men and took their orders. "Wait a minute," she said. "You're Israelites, aren't you?" "No." "Yes, you are. I'd know you anywhere. It was your lot burnt down my village. Why do you think I'm doing this crummy job?" Suddenly, the door burst open and the two men slipped into the shadows. "Anti-terrorist squad," came a voice. "Israelite spies in the vicinity." "Quick, this way," whispered the barmaid, and she whisked the two men up the back stairs. They found themselves in a poky attic room with a thatched roof. Heavy footsteps were pounding up the stairs towards them, and there was nowhere to hide. In desperation, they stretched up, tore at the thatch, and wriggled inside it. Then they lay there motionless, looking down, their hearts pounding. Then the barmaid flung herself into the bed, pulled the duvet over her head, and started to snore. 4 plainclothesmen burst into the room. "Clear off, you great apes," she shouted. "I finished work half an hour ago. I want to rest." "We've got a search warrant," grunted one of the thugs. "Then search the potty," she said. "It's the only place you'll find anything." No thanks," said the thugs, and wandered off down the corridor. Soon, their heavy footsteps could be heard plonking down the stairs again. Then they'd gone. The 2 Israelites swung down from the roof. "Thank you, darling," said Achan. "But why did you help us?" asked Caleb, "if you knew where we were from?" "I've seen your God in action," shuddered the barmaid. "He's not like our gods. They're old gods. The corn god, the thunder god, the earth mother, geriatrics dossing around in their temples. The God of the Israelites is like a desert wind. Hot, strong, fierce, young. He blasts anything in his path. He'll smash this crummy place to pieces and all the crummy men who live in it. Why should I stand in his way?" "When he smashes Jericho," said Caleb quietly, "hang this red duvet out of your window. We'll make sure you don't come to any harm. Yeah, provided you keep quiet about us, darling," added Achan. "What about my mother?" "Yes, bring her in. We'll look after her. And my sister and my mother-in-law and the woman next door but one." "Yes, bring them all in. You've helped the God of the Israelites. Now it's his turn to help you." And the 2 men climbed out of the window, slid down the city wall, and made their way back to General Joshua. Next morning, a little kid was lying face down on the city walls, dribbling out olive stones and watching them splat into the sand below, when he saw a raggle-taggle bunch of travellers shovelling up the hill. "Quick!" he shouted. "Squatters! We've got squatters!" The people raced to the walls. Below them was what looked like a big bunch of hippies, dirty, poor people in old clothes, lugging musical instruments. One of them stepped forward, a tall man with blazing eyes. "In the days of your grandfathers, the Israelites went down to Egypt," he said. "Now we have returned home." "Clear off!" shouted the people of Jericho. "Go and find yourselves jobs on the other side of the river. Canaan for the Canaanites!" And the big city gates slammed shut. "This land is our land," persisted the big man. "Our God has given it to us." Splat! A big ball of spit hit him full in the face, but he hardly flinched. "Your city will be turned to rubble," he raged. "I, General Joshua, swear it." Splat, splat, splat! Great buckets of slops were raining down on the Israelites, and the people of Jericho were laughing and laughing and laughing. Then 7 of the wildest-looking travellers, with hair down to their waists and faraway eyes, picked up trumpets and started to play. Then drums joined in, and guitars, everyone playing this slow, throbbing, incessant rhythm. Then slowly, they began to shuffle round the city walls. The whole tribe, men, women, even the children, clapping, dancing, all with serious, serious faces. And in the middle of this dancing throng were 4 more wild men, carrying a big wooden thing slung on 2 wooden poles. "What's that?" someone whispered. "It's their magic box," answered the barmaid. "Touch it and you die." Next day, the music started up again, and once more the Israelites shuffled all the way round the city. Only this time, the Canaanites couldn't help noticing the daggers and nasty-looking swords tucked into their belts, and the look of hatred in their eyes, and they started to panic. "Ignore them," said the mayor. "There's no problem. The gates are locked and the walls are 2 meters thick." Next day, the crowd below was bigger. A band of runaway slaves had joined them, a few bandits, even some of the poorer people from the city sneaked out and joined in the dance. And gradually, the word went round. Some Israelites who never went to Egypt all those years ago and had almost forgotten they were Israelites came out of their Canaanite cities with their trumpets and drums and daggers and knives. Poor people who'd lost their farms, angry people who'd lost their jobs, all joined in the dance. General Joshua held a council of war. We reckon they'll be out of food pretty soon, said Caleb. Yeah, and they should be getting quite thirsty by now, added Achan. We've poisoned their wells and put fighting men round all the emergency exits. Joshua gave a dreadful smile. We'll let them stew for a few more days, he said. As each day passed, the crowd got bigger and the music got louder. By the seventh day, the crowd was an army, pushing, jostling, dancing, clapping. The Canaanites were panicking now. More and more of them climbed over the crumbly old walls to join in the dance. Dust and bits of masonry showered down on the dancers, but still the dance went on and on. Around they went 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times, 7. Then suddenly, the music stopped. The crowd on the walls hushed. What would happen next? Deep in the heart of the city, a pimply student woke up with a hangover. Oh, he tried to get back to sleep, but it was all hot and sticky. God of thunder, his bedclothes stank. He limped across the room, and for the first time that year, he hung his old red duvet out of the window for an airing. At the foot of the walls, Joshua's long, ragged hair was flickering in the breeze and his eyes were blazing fiercer than ever. "Fellow Israelites," he called, "Jericho is ours." Then his wild, holy men sucked the air deep into their lungs and they blew long and hard on their trumpets, a high-pitched screeching noise that went on and on and on and on and on and on and on. Then a blood-curdling yell sprang from the throats of the Israelites and they flung themselves at the city walls with their spades and their pickaxes and their long wooden levers. The whole of Jericho screamed a cry of terror. They had to get out of the city or be hacked to pieces. 1,000 crude rope ladders were flung over the edge. 10,000 Canaanites hurled themselves over the wall. And all the time, the shrill blast of the trumpets grew more and more deafening. Then, with a dull thud, a vast section of the wall went sliding down the hillside. Canaanites, Israelites, plain clothesmen, houses, giant bronze gods, all toppled downwards in an avalanche of destruction. Great choking dust clouds erupted into the air as with swords drawn, the Israelite army poured through the breach in the massive wall. Achan and Caleb darted here and there, issuing orders. "Destroy everything," they shouted. "Save no one! Only don't touch the house with the red duvet!" Soon, the city was totally destroyed. Its people lay dead in the streets. Nervously, the barmaid and her family picked their way through the rubble to join the Israelites, the only survivors. Well, almost. The pimply student couldn't believe his luck. How come he'd been left alone? He'd never know. He slipped out through the ruins to warn the people of the next town. Someone was going to have to stop these bloodthirsty nomads and their magic box before it was too late.